Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and my channel is Discerning What is True. Today is the 17th day of December 2023, and I'm going to be reading from the book The Temple of Man, chapter 4, called The Plan by Rene Schwaller de Levitz. Uh, as he was at the Temple of Lazor. In another book I just completed today, speaking of what I call the sacred science. Him and his wife were involved for over 15 years of investigation at that particular temple back in the 1930s and 40s, as well as I recollect. So I'm going to be reading this particular book tonight, which is dealing with what I would call um, the temple and man. When speaking of pharaonic Egypt, one must never say always and always avoid saying never, because pharaonic science is the science of life, moving, adaptable, founded on the knowledge of death, which produces life. The time had not yet come for a revelation of the redemption. This was the patriarchal epoch, the source. In the construction of the temple, several kinds of foundations can be conserved, that is. And I'm going to show you that right now. This is what they call virgil soil. Get here, and I'll show you this right here in this book. This is going to be one down here with my fingers here at the bottom. The temple is set on virgin soil with no real foundation. The soil is prepared by the symbolic sowing of various materials such as charcoal, resin, bitumen, natural salts combined for this purpose, and other consecrated materials. The temple construction on chosen blocks from a temple that had been turned under, like germinated seed that returns to the earth. The blocks are chosen and placed with care, providing, among other things, information on the meaning of the preceding monument and on the orientation of past and future temples. Let us note as well foundations on the unfired bricks of a previous temple, maybe, symbolizing water, that is to say, the mud of the water. And I'll show you this particular sketch here he has at the top here. Again, this is Rene Schwaller's works. I've already read a couple of his works already, and I have another one of his also here that I've yet to get involved in, which is called The Egyptian Miracle. The temple built on a hollow basin or stylobate filled with stones from the preceding works, in apparent disorder. One must be on one's guard, for this disorder is only apparent. Great experience is necessary to discover in it the location of the sanctuary, the axis of orientation, and various symbols indicating the esoteric purpose of the new temple. So this is all again to deal with esoteric perspective here. They knew what they were doing. The stylobate plays the role of a vase in which the final growth of the seed thrown in this place will be accomplished. Then he shows here a picture of what I'll call at Karnak, where the temple of Montu built on hollow stylobate. This would be the upper part here. Right here. So at figure 23 is called the Madamenet, the original temple sanctuary on the mounds, which is what I showed you here earlier. And then the strange figure here, that is figure 24, is Abu Simbel, the great temple hollowed out of the rock. The monument dug in the earth or carved in the rock must also be noted. Here, earth and rock are considered the matrix of the temple. On the foundation of the second and third types, the platform on the base is set up. The platform is useful for tracing the geometric functions that serve as a definition for the measures consistent with the idea of the temple. In the Temple of Zazor, the same unit of measurement that is used for the geometric elaborations is employed for the head in all its details. On the outline, necessarily rigid, are constructed the walls of the chambers and rooms of the covered temple. These walls must be adapted to the idea to be expressed, and they follow the outline on the ground while retaining their autonomy. The Pharaonic architects construct their sanctuaries just as nature constructs a plant. If a certain cell ought to be hexagon, it will be so. Since it is living and growing, it adapts itself according to the needs of the moment of it and of the place. Similarly, certain chambers, apparently square or rectangle in plan, will be slightly robotic and trapezoid. One need only examine in their angles the cut of the stones to establish that for this distortion. Exceptional effort was required to give these angles a few degrees more or less than a right angle. The same kind of ronabons or trapezoids can be found on the surface of the walls of the tabloid. We might be inclined to attribute this to an oversight, but these distortions are insensibly compensated for a occasional repeated. The purpose of this is always to specifically measure in the spirit that I have described. For example, the north wall of room 12 with its 12 columns shows a slight concave curve, verifiable alone along 2/3 of its length. Obviously, one is tempted to attribute this curve to a modification of the entire construction. However, each of the blocks making up this wall is cut with a slight curve having the same verse sign, S-I-N-E. One stands amazed before each study refinement, such care in remaining loyal to the symbolism of the place, down to the subtlest details. The study of a pharaonic monument is inexhaustible. The covered temple of Zazor is constructed along 3 axes. Number 1, A, medium axis accurately dividing the south face into the 2 equal parts, the geometric astronomical axis. 2, a longitude axis for construction, the general axis of measure. 3, an axis dividing the width of the nanos, N-A-O-S, of Ammon into equal parts, the horariot axis of Ammon. The geometric axis is marked in sanctuary under the platform, that is figure 25, but its influence works in an occult manner. The axis of measure is traced under the limestone paving of sanctuary 6 of the bark of Amun on the sandstone platform. It was later hammered without being effects. See figure 26. This axis divides the wall of the south face into the 2 unequal parts. The eastern part comprises exactly 10 phantoms. The western part comprises another measure of a closely defined nature. The axis transects with the axis of Amun on a keystone located on the threshold between the sanctuary of the bark, that is room 6 and room 4. The axis of Ammon is marked on the ground under the limestone paving of room 6, that is see figure 26. It divides the naos of Androsander into 2 equal parts along its entire length. The axis is framed to the left and right on the south interior stiles of this naos by 2 ram head dyke pillars. It ends at the north side of the temple against the west pylon in the chapel of Ammon. So I'm going to show you that here. It's a geometric axis at 33 degrees. Sorry about that. The center and between two ram head dies traced on the south wall of this pylon. This is figure 26. Oh my. The center and between two ram's heads die traced on the south wall of the pylon. The axis of Amun forms an angle of 54 degrees with the general axis. On the exterior side wall of room 1 is traced a Ankh sign, the symbol of life. Certain axes are indicated by a Ankh. Here it is a question of an indication of a measure resulting from a geometric function directly related to the basic unit, that is the phantom, of their measures used in the temple. The entire covered temple appears as a construction established on the plan of axis and later displaced from the axis by a slight pivoting motion. This displacement action is constant, not only for the plan of the entire building, but for the figure as well, and its correspondence to a purpose. In the ceiling of the Amundian naos of Alexander, there is a reused sandstone travel whose ornamentation is similar to that of the pink granite archetype at the entrance of the chapel of Amun, of the repository of Ramses II in the first court of the temple. We must once and for all conceive the pharaonic temple as a seed in the process of bearing its fruit. It is truly the most grandiose conception of architecture. However, a building is by nature rigid. One could, if need be, imagine figurations that would recall this gestation. That would be rational, but not vital, as in the spirit of the ancient Egyptians. For them, the entire building had to live. This characteristic of gestation may have prompted Herbert Rick, R-I-C-K-E, to consider pharaonic architecture vegetal, V-E-G-E-T-A-L. This is correct, since all gestation comprised both growth and vegetation, but this strict enclosure in a formula corresponding to the Western mentality is devoid of light. Growth unfolds in 3 dimensions, and gestation is a constant transformation into the perfection of the new seed. Comparison with other known examples, such as the affordable Kamutef, K-A-M-U-T-E-F, will reveal the method used to make this architecture live. The reasoning might be the following. Since every generation involves a growth in volume, since all growth can only take place in a harmonious rhythm, that is to say, proportionate to a particular coefficient, and since this rhythm is indisputable, I should say, ordained by phi, the golden number, it is sufficient to know the module, that is coefficient, particular to the species or to the individual member of the species or of the neater principle to make a living harmoniously, that is magical, correct form, developing a architecture or image from this module with phi. In response to this reasoning, one might raise the objective that phi is the golden section of the line, but it does not apply to surfaces. And as for volumes, the problem seems to have no solution. In mathematics, indeed, scientific and aesthetic terms, what the very erudite Matilda C. G-H-Y-K-A, I don't know how to pronounce it, just spell it to you, has written about the golden number could scarcely be surpassed. However, here one finds only the quantitative aspect of the question, for the ancients did not approach the problem in the same way. There is a philosophical aspect not understood by the West. Like a Renaissance man, Goethe allowed himself to be tempted by the Fibonacci series, which affronts a pulsation of the value of phi. Male and female aspects for the number do, in fact, exist, but with no modification of exact value. The ancient Egyptians, as far as can be ascertained, do not make use of the correct value. With them, there are no generalizations or generalities in the uses of this number, but an exact reasoning with regard to its meaning. 1. Maintain that my reasoning is applicable and that the preceding objective has no value, because there does not exist a value phi for a surface, and there does exist a golden number for volumes. In constructing figures, one must not depart from the figure in order to deduce its movements. This is merely studying it. It is necessary to find the geometric construction that makes it move. There are two axes of construction: the axis of stability, which passes through the ear, that is the inner ear, the equilibrium, and ends in the sole of the feet, S-O-L-E. The axis of movement, which theoretically passes through the eye, is the sight that directs, and the big toe. It is on the ball of the foot that one places one's weight in order to move forward. There are four forms of application: the immobile figure, the figure about to move, the case of what we call cameton sighted, the figure in motion, the normal stride, and running, the long stride. The principle of motion through pivoting is applied to the famous figure of cameton located at N, which is north, on the general plan. Figure 27 and 28 show the application of the outlines, taken into account all the stone joints, and prove that these stone joints are not located haphazardly. One might raise the objection that this figure was drawn and placed in relationship on an older wall. It is nonetheless true that the figure corresponded point by point with the set of joints. The accessory figures of the symbol R, on the other hand, always traced according to one of the functions of phi. There is indisputably a geometric basis acting as a grid for the construction of this figure. This geometric basis is found everywhere, but the module varies, which means that the symbolic meaning must be sought within this module. The entire construction of the temple can be broken down, as Ludwig Borchardt has pointed out, into three phases. I shall not concern myself with the historical aspect, only the symbolism. So is this going to be, I'm going to try to show this to you. This is going to be a little hard to see. This is figure 27 at Lazor. And let's see if we can get this thing to where it should be at. This is it here on this side. See if I can get it here. Since I'm here, I'm going to go also do the figure, which is figure 28, which is on this side here. So you can see the stone joints determines the rectangle here, which he shows here, the black box here type of deal. This item, the second one, figure 28, this outline is designed to show the two slopes imparted to the vertical line, double X, passing through the stone joint and giving the cameton movement. The axis of stability starts from the center of equilibrium, X, inter ear. Its slope is given by angle A. The axis of movement starts from the tip of the foot. Its slope is given by the angle B. Only the symbolism interests me here. The first stage of the temple includes the covered temple and the great peristyle court. hence for the T to S as indicated in figure 48. The second stage adds the great Ammonian colonnade, the nave as far as the seated black columns located in front of his entrance. Then there is added the court of the colonists called the court of Ramses with the pylons. It is obvious that the overall plan pre-existed and that it was known to those who executed it. This is shown by the strict observation of proportions that cannot always be the result of coincidence. 2. The axis of Ammon, which was traced by the first builders under the paving of the sanctuary of the Bark of Ammon, and ends in the north quite precisely on the axis of the Ammonian chapel set up in the colonnade of the court of Ramses along the south face of the first pylon. 3. The astronomical character of the movement of the geometric axis, see chapter 5, that is orientation. In the supplement to chapter 8 can be found explanations showing that the modification of the entire building were foreseen from the start. The summaries of principles. A plan requires systemization to apply an idea. All systemization requires a logic imposing a constant in the matter of execution. In the Temple of Azor, we observe the use of several axes, which allows an action or movement in the harmony of the construction. This movement takes place within a rhythm given by the module or the particular coefficient or the thing or idea to be defined. This is a subtle way of playing with the rigidity imposed by matter. Moreover, it demonstrates a profound understanding of nature, which always proceeds in this matter. For the subject occupying these pages, I have merely indicated the display in the plans, but it applies equally to volumes. The Pharaonic masters did not make the mistake of starting from a Euclidean point. The point is divine and comprehensively, whereas in nature everything has volume. Thus it is from volume that they start because their thinking is positive. You do not base their geometric on a indefinite moral or sentimental abstraction. Their goal is to awaken the consciousness of what we call God. Their means, on the contrary, are positive, i.e., within the laws of matter. As the terrestrial environment of our existence is positive. The Upanishads also teach that it is impossible for us to learn elsewhere what we are incapable of learning within our own bodies. I think that's a good point. The whole point is to activate the higher faculties and not be content with deceptive means of cerebral intelligence. The volume once cut gives the plane. The latter is comprehensive. These edges, that is 3 edges at least, determine a point. This point has a meaning because it is ternary, T-E-R-N-A-R-Y. This mode is thought. This mode is of thought opens the doorway into a mathematical philosophy. It is the philosophy that is expressed in the plan of the Temple of the Zor. That is our conclusion of chapter 4 tonight from the particular book called The Temple of Man, which is again by Rene Schwaller. Thank you for being here, as I've showed some illustrations here from his book. And thank you again for your time. All right. Thank you. Have a good night. Take care.